My name is Lily Carter, and I was only 11 years old during the summer. I learned that even inside my own home, food could become a luxury. My family was not poor. My parents had not been in an accident, nor were they forced to leave in a panic. They left in the scent of expensive perfume, the sound of suitcase wheels rolling across the wooden floor, and plane tickets to Europe. My mother left two $10 bills, a silver credit card, and one sentence on the kitchen table. It was so cold that I still remember every word. "You're old enough now, Lily. Don't bother anyone." If you have ever felt abandoned inside your own family, comment 1. Some wounds do not begin with shouting. They begin with a door closing very softly. Our house was in the southern suburbs of Denver, Colorado. From the outside, it looked like every beautiful family home in an American movie. The lawn was neatly trimmed, the white fence was spotless, and two cars sat perfectly inside the garage. Every Christmas, my mother posted photos online with the caption, "Grateful for my little family." My mother's name was Monica Carter. She was a real estate agent, always well-dressed, always smiling at the right moment, always knowing how to make people believe she was a devoted mother. On social media, she had thousands of followers. They saw the weekend trips and the perfect birthday cakes. But they never saw me sitting quietly at the edge of the table trying to eat quickly, so I would not bother anyone. My father, Richard Carter, was a man who lived in the house but often felt more like a guest than a father. He left early for work, came home late, ate dinner in silence, and then sat in front of the television. When my mother said something, he nodded. When my mother made a decision, he stayed silent. I used to think silence meant kindness. Only much later did I understand that silence can also be complicity. I had known how to make my own breakfast since I was 8. I signed my own permission slips when my mother forgot. I walked to school by myself when my father said he was busy with a meeting. My mother called me an easy child to raise. She said I liked being alone. Then she smiled, and I nodded, because I had learned that objecting only made the room colder. I thought that was normal. I thought every child had to shrink themselves to fit inside the comfort of adults. Until that July morning when my parents pulled their suitcases out the door, left for Paris, Rome, and Santorini for a month, and left me behind with $20 on the kitchen table. When the car carrying them disappeared around the corner, I stood by the door for a long time. A part of me was waiting for them to come back and say it had only been a test. But the street stayed quiet. The house behind me stayed quiet too. And for the first time, I understood how terrifying silence could be. 2 weeks before they left, my mother called me down to the living room. I was doing my summer homework at the dining table, reading a short passage about ancient cities in Europe. I remember highlighting the word Paris in blue, not knowing that name would become a cut in my memory. My mother was sitting on the sofa, her laptop open on her lap. On the screen were plane tickets, hotels, and sightseeing schedules. My father stood near the window, staring out at the lawn, as if whatever was about to be said had nothing to do with him. "Lily, my mother," said her voice, as casual as if she were announcing dinner. "Your father and I are going to Europe for a month. Paris, Rome, then Santorini. I need a break." "So does your father." I froze at the foot of the stairs. Who will I stay with? My mother did not look at me. She kept moving the mouse across the screen, checking hotels, check-in dates and dinners. "You'll stay home." I thought I had heard her wrong. "Alone." Only then did my mother look up. Her eyes were not angry, but that made them even more frightening. They looked like the eyes of someone who had just been interrupted by something too small to matter. "You're 11 years old, Lily. Don't act like you're 5. I turned to my father. I still hoped he would say something, even just one sentence like, "No, she is too young." But my father only shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes still fixed outside the window. His silence fell over the room, heavier than any scolding. "Can Grandma come?" I asked. "Or Aunt Claire?" The moment she heard Aunt Claire's name, my mother pressed her lips together. Don't mention that woman in this house. Aunt Claire was my mother's younger sister. I had not been allowed to see her for years. My mother said Aunt Claire liked interfering in other people's families, but from when I was little, I remembered that she had once held me very tightly. My mother stood up, opened her purse, and took out two $10 bills and a silver credit card. She placed them on the kitchen table and pushed them toward me with the tips of two fingers, as if she were handing over something unimportant. This money is for snacks if you need them. And this card is only for a real emergency. The house burning down, you getting badly hurt, things like that. Understand. I looked at the two bills lying flat on the table. Only this much for a whole month. My mother's face darkened. There is food in the refrigerator. There are dry goods in the pantry. You know how to cook noodles and make sandwiches. I have taught you enough. I wanted to say that she had never really taught me. I had learned by watching, by figuring things out alone, by making mistakes, and then getting scolded for them. But I did not say it. I only nodded because that was the only way to keep the room from breaking apart. And remember, my mother added, her voice dropping lower. Do not call the neighbors. Do not call the school. Do not make a scene. Your father and I are only going on vacation. We are not abandoning you. That sentence was supposed to comfort me. Instead, it made my throat tighten. The morning they left, my mother wore a cream floral dress, her hair softly curled with the gold bracelet on her wrist that she only wore on occasions when she wanted to be complimented. My father dragged two large suitcases to the door while my mother stood in front of the mirror near the entrance, touching up her lipstick, as if the most important thing that morning was getting a beautiful airport photo. I stood at the foot of the stairs, holding my old teddy bear tightly against my chest. I knew I was too old to hold a stuffed animal in front of my parents, but that day my hands needed something to cling to. My mother looked at me through the mirror without fully turning around. Lock the door carefully. Don't open it for strangers. Don't make unnecessary phone calls. My father carried the suitcases outside. He looked at me for a moment, his lips moving slightly as if he was about to say something. I waited. Even one sentence would have been enough. Will you be okay? I'll call you. Or at least goodbye, Lily. But then my mother called him from the yard and he turned away. The car carrying them left while the sky was still bright. I stood behind the glass door, watching the black car slide out of the driveway, turn past the maple trees, and disappear. I stayed there for a very long time, so long that my legs went numb. In my mind, one childish, foolish thought kept repeating itself. Maybe they would come back because they had forgotten their passports, their sunglasses, or something else. Maybe they would open the door, laugh, and say it had all been a lesson to see whether I could be independent. But no one came back. By afternoon, the house began to change. It was the same sofa, the same kitchen, the same clock on the wall, but everything felt wider, colder, and more unfamiliar. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen sounded strangely loud. The wind brushing against the upstairs windows startled me again and again. I turned on every light in the living room, the kitchen, and the hallway, but the brightness did not make the house feel warmer. I opened the refrigerator to find dinner. Inside, there was only half a carton of milk, 4 eggs, a few open jars of tomato sauce, and a slightly dry loaf of bread. The freezer was almost completely empty. There was no meat, no vegetables, and no prepared food, like my mother had said. I took a slice of bread, spread a little of the remaining peanut butter from the jar, and sat at the kitchen table to eat. The chair across from me was empty. The 2 chairs beside it were empty too. Before, I had sometimes wished dinner could be quieter without my mother's sighs or my father's avoiding eyes. But when the silence truly arrived, I understood that it was not peace. It felt like being forgotten. That night, I pulled the blanket up to my chin, left the nightlight on, and stared at the ceiling until almost morning. Every tiny sound made my heart pound. I did not cry. I just lay still, listening to the house, breathe in the darkness, and told myself I had to be even better, because maybe if I behaved well enough, they would remember to call. On the morning of the second day, I woke up with a dry, burning throat and an empty stomach. For the first few seconds, I forgot my parents had left. I sat up quickly, listening for my mother's footsteps downstairs, the sound of the coffee machine, my father opening the garage door. But the house remained silent, like a sealed box. I went down to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator again, as if it might have somehow filled itself overnight. The half carton of milk was still there, smelling slightly sour. The 4 eggs were still in the same place. The loaf of bread had grown harder. I counted the 2 $10 bills on the table again, then took a scrap of paper from my school bag and did the math. $20 for 30 days. I divided it again and again, but the answer did not change. Less than $1 a day. I looked at the silver credit card lying beside the cash and tried to reassure myself. My mother had said it was for emergencies. If having no food was not an emergency, then what was? I opened the old tablet my mother had left behind, found a pizza place near the house, and ordered the smallest size. My hands shook as I entered the card number. When the screen showed that the transaction had been declined, I thought I had typed something wrong. I tried again. Declined. The third time, I checked every number, the expiration date, and the security code on the back of the card. The result was still the same. Transaction failed. I sat frozen in front of the screen. I called the customer service number printed on the back of the card. An automated voice spoke in a flat, steady tone. I followed each step, my heart beating so fast that my chest hurt. Then the answer came calm and indifferent, as if it had no idea it had just pushed a child to the bottom of despair. This card has not been activated. Please contact the bank for assistance. I placed the card down on the table very gently. My mother had not forgotten. My father had not forgotten either. They had placed something in my hand that looked like protection, but inside it was empty. That afternoon, I called my mother. The phone rang for a long time. When she answered, I could hear music in the background and the sound of knives and forks touching plates. "Mom, the card doesn't work," I said. "I don't have enough money to buy food." My mother sighed as if I were the only thing ruining her vacation. "Lily, you're exaggerating again. There is food in the house. Not enough for a month. Then eat less. I'm at a restaurant. Don't call me over little things." Before I could say anything else, the call ended. I stared at the dark screen, then looked at the silver card on the table. That was when I understood. In my emergency, my mother had no intention of showing up. On the third day, I walked to the grocery store almost 2 blocks from our house. The July sun in Denver was dry and harsh, making the road shine like a sheet of silver. I wore an old t-shirt, the money my mother had left pressed tightly in my pocket, reminding myself with every step that I only needed to buy the cheapest things, the things that could last the longest. Inside the store, I stood for a long time in front of the instant food shelves. Instant noodles, white bread, peanut butter, a small bag of apples, cartons of milk. Every item felt like a math problem I was not old enough to solve. I picked things up and put them down and picked them up again, afraid that one wrong choice would leave me with nothing to eat later. In the end, I bought 6 packs of noodles, 1 loaf of white bread, and a small bottle of water. The cashier looked at me strangely. "Shopping by yourself, sweetheart." I tightened my grip on the bag. "My mom is waiting outside in the car." That was the first lie I ever told to protect the person who had left me behind. When I got home, I lined up each pack of noodles on the table as if I were dividing rations during a war. 1 pack had to become 2 meals. Half a pack in the morning, half a pack at night. If I got too hungry, I would drink water. If my stomach hurt, I would lie still. I told myself that because I did not know who else to tell. By the fifth day, my body began to react. When I stood up too quickly, my vision went dark. My hands felt cold even though it was hot outside. The smell of food drifting in from a neighbor's house made my stomach twist. At times I hated myself for wanting a normal dinner so badly that I almost cried. That evening I opened my mother's social media. Her newest photo appeared first. She was standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, red lipstick, white dress, a glass of wine in her hand. The caption said she was living the best days of her life. Underneath, people commented that she deserved the break, that my family was wonderful. I stared at that picture for a long time. Behind my mother were the lights of Paris. In front of me was half a pack of cold noodles, cloudy and salty. I did not know what hurt more, my empty stomach, or the feeling that I did not exist in the perfect life my mother was showing the world. That night, I took the old tablet upstairs. I turned on the camera, looked at my pale face on the screen, and whispered very softly, "Today is day 5. Mom is having dinner in Paris." I ate half a pack of noodles. I did not know why I recorded it. Maybe because when no one was listening, I still wanted something to witness that I had been there, that I had been hungry, that I had been scared, and that I had not made any of it up. By the 7th day, I had become more afraid of the doorbell than of the darkness at night. Every time someone walked past the house, I stood frozen behind the curtain like a child who had done something wrong. My mother had told me not to bother anyone. If I made other people notice me, then I would be the ungrateful one. That afternoon, while I was trying to break half a slice of dry bread into tiny pieces, the doorbell rang. Outside stood Mr. Harold Bennett, the neighbor who lived next door. He was over 70 with silver hair, and he lived alone with his old cat named Milo. I opened the door just wide enough to look out. "Hello, Lily," he said. "I noticed your parents' car hasn't been home for a few days. Is everything all right?" I nodded too quickly. "Yes, everything is fine. My parents are away on business." "On business?" He looked at me a little longer. "Then who is staying with you?" That question made my throat tighten. I had prepared a lie, but when I looked into his kind eyes, I suddenly did not have the strength to perform. "I can take care of myself," I said. "Esther." Harold was silent. Then he asked very softly, "Have you eaten anything today?" I wanted to say yes and close the door. But my stomach hurt, my head was light, and my lips were dry and cracked. The truth was written all over my face. "I ate," I said, but my voice trembled. He did not expose me. He only nodded as if he believed the lie, so I could keep the last bit of dignity I had left. "I made too much spaghetti," he said. "If you don't mind, come over and help me finish some of it." I knew he was lying. People who lived alone did not accidentally cook too much at the exact moment the child next door was hungry. But I was too hungry to refuse. That evening I sat in Mr. Harold's small kitchen and ate a hot plate of spaghetti. The smell of garlic was so warm that it made my eyes sting. He did not ask me anything while I ate. He only placed a glass of milk beside me and sat across from me, silent in a way that did not scare me. When the plate was almost clean, he finally spoke. "Where did your parents really go?" I looked down at my hands. Then everything spilled out. "You're up. 1 month, $20. The card that had not been activated. The phone call that had been cut off. Esther." Harold sat for a long time without speaking. When he finally answered, his voice was heavier than before. "Lily, this is not your fault." I shook my head. "Please don't call the police. If my mother finds out, she'll be very angry." He looked at me, his eyes turning red. "I won't frighten you. But I will bring food over every day. And if anything goes wrong, you need to write it down. Dates, meals, phone calls. Sometimes evidence is the only thing that protects a child when adults refuse to tell the truth. That night when I went back home, I held the tablet tighter against my chest. For the first time in many days, I did not record, only because I was afraid. I recorded because someday the truth would need to be heard. By the second week, summer school began. My mother had signed me up months earlier, not because she cared about my grades, but because she did not like seeing me hanging around the house. Only now did I understand that the class also helped her create the illusion that everything was normal. A child who showed up at school must surely have an adult taking care of them at home, right? On the first morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a very long time. My hair was tangled, my t-shirt was wrinkled, and my shoes were dirty because no one had reminded me to clean them for days. I did not know how to use the washing machine, and I did not have enough strength to stand there long enough to try. I smoothed my hair down with my hands, attempted a smile at myself, then gave up. The face in the mirror did not look like a child on summer break. It looked like someone trying not to disappear. My summer school teacher was named Mrs. Patterson. She noticed me the moment I walked into class late. Her eyes were not sharp like my mother's, and they were not distant like my father's. They stayed on me long enough to make me afraid. "Lily, are you all right?" she asked. "I'm fine," I answered too quickly. She did not push, but throughout the morning, every time I looked down at my notebook, I could still feel her eyes somewhere near me. At lunch break, I said I was not hungry. The truth was I was starving, but I did not have enough money left in my pocket to buy anything from the cafeteria. I sat in the corner of the courtyard, drank water from the fountain, and pretended to read a book. If you have ever wished that just one adult would notice you were not okay, comment, "I understand." And if this story touches you, subscribe to the channel to follow the next parts. 3 days later, my body betrayed my lie. During math class, the numbers on the board began to blur. The sound of pencils around me grew distant, as if I were hearing them from underwater. I gripped the edge of my desk and tried to sit up straight, but my stomach cramped and my head felt weightless. When Mrs. Patterson called my name, all I managed to see was the ceiling tilting downward. When I woke up, I was lying in the nurse's office. The nurse placed a cool cloth on my forehead. Mrs. Patterson stood by the door, her face pale. "Did you eat breakfast?" Lily, the nurse asked. I wanted to say yes, but the word caught in my throat. I had eaten half a pack of noodles the night before. The nurse led me to the scale. When she saw the number, her eyebrows pulled together. "You've lost a lot of weight." Mrs. Patterson sat down beside the bed, her voice very soft. "Lily, who is taking care of you at home?" I looked at my 2 hands. They were thinner than I remembered. I had planned to say my parents were on a business trip to say the babysitter was busy, but I was too tired now. Too tired to keep protecting my mother's lie. "No one," I whispered. The room went quiet. No one scolded me. No one told me I was exaggerating. Mrs. Patterson only held my hand and said, the one sentence that made my eyes burn. "I am not going to pretend I don't see this anymore." For the first time in many days, I did not feel invisible. That evening, while I was eating the plain rice, Mr. Harold had brought over. The phone rang. An unknown number appeared on the screen. I knew it was my mother even before I answered because my stomach tightened. "Lily." My mother's voice was sharp and cold. Behind her, I could hear music, people laughing, and glasses touching. "Your school just called me." "What did you say to them?" I gripped the spoon tightly. "I didn't say anything. I just got dizzy." "Don't lie to me." Her voice dropped lower. "I am in Santorini at an important dinner, and I had to step outside because the school said you were having a health issue. Do you know how embarrassed I am?" I looked down at the bowl of cold rice. Mom, I don't have much food left. She laughed. This again. Lily, you always turn small things into tragedies. There is food in the house. I left you money. I left you a card. The card doesn't work. Because I told you to use it only in an emergency. I think being hungry is an emergency. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I had made a mistake. Not because they were untrue, but because to my mother the fact that I dared to name the truth was always a form of rebellion. Listen carefully, she said. If you tell your teacher, the nurse, the neighbors, or anyone else that your parents abandoned you, I will tell them you are making it up. I will tell them you have psychological problems. And when I get home, I will send you to boarding school. I sat frozen. The kitchen suddenly felt colder. My mother was not only refusing to worry about me, she was ready to turn me into a liar to protect her own image. Do you understand? She asked. I looked at the tablet on the table. The dark screen reflected my tired face. Yes, I said. Then stop bothering me. I am trying to rest. The call ended. I kept the phone against my ear for a few more seconds, listening to the empty silence as if I were hearing another door close. After that, I opened my mother's social media. She had just posted a new photo. She and my father were standing in front of a Santorini sunset, hand in hand, smiling brightly. The caption said it was a dream dinner. I looked at my father in the picture. He was smiling. Maybe he had not heard my mother threaten me. Maybe he had heard and turned away. I pulled the tablet closer and turned on the camera. This time my voice was no longer trembling like it had on the 5th day. It was hoarse and quiet, but clear. Today is day 14. Mom called from Santorini. She said if I tell the truth, she will tell everyone I have psychological problems. She said she will send me away. I looked straight into the camera. For the first time, I was not recording only because I wanted someone to believe me. I was recording because I was beginning to understand that if I stayed silent, my mother would rewrite the entire story. And in that story, I would become the bad child who ruined her beautiful vacation. That night, I did not sleep. But I was no longer only afraid. Something very small inside me had woken up. It was not strong enough yet to be called courage. But it was enough for me to whisper into the darkness that maybe I was not wrong. From the 15th day on, I began recording everything in a more organized way. Before that, my videos had been like trapped cries, messy and trembling, sometimes nothing more than my face in the dark with a few broken sentences. But after the call from Santorini, I understood that if adults ever asked what had happened, I could not simply say I was hungry. I had to show them how hungry I had been for how long, and who had known it but still turned away. Every morning, I placed the tablet on the kitchen shelf, pressed record, and opened the refrigerator. I said the date, the time, and what was left inside. 2 eggs. Half a loaf of bread. 1 jar of tomato sauce. No milk. No noodles. Some mornings I opened the refrigerator only to record the emptiness, then closed it very gently, as if I were afraid of disturbing the very house that had abandoned me. After that, I went into the bathroom and placed the tablet across from the scale. I stepped onto it and watched the number drop little by little. I did not fully understand what it meant, but I knew my body was becoming smaller. My pants were looser. My shirt slipped off my shoulders. When I looked in the mirror, I saw deeper shadows under my eyes, and lips so dry they had begun to crack. I also began keeping a journal in an old notebook. Every page followed the same pattern. Day 16. Ate half a slice of bread and 1 egg. Head hurt all afternoon. Mom posted a dinner photo in Rome. Day 17. No eggs left. Esther. Harold brought a container of soup. I ate slowly because I was afraid it would be gone too fast. Day 18. The school emailed Mom. Mom did not reply. I got dizzy when I stood up. Those lines were not beautiful. My handwriting shook, and sometimes the ink blurred because my hands were wet or because I was too tired to hold the pen properly. But every line was a small stake driven into the ground, reminding me that I was real, that my pain was real, and that one day someone would not be able to deny it. Esther. Harold still brought food over every evening. He never stepped inside unless I invited him, and he did not ask too many questions when I lowered my head. But his eyes grew more worried each day. One evening, while I was eating a sandwich at the kitchen table, he stood by the door and spoke very slowly. Lily, I cannot keep pretending you are all right. My hand froze. You promised not to call the police. I promised I would not frighten you, he said. But you are getting weaker. The school has seen it. The nurse has seen it. If kind adults stay silent because they are afraid of scaring you, then who is going to protect you? I wanted to be angry with him. I wanted to say he did not understand my mother. But the truth was, he understood more than I thought. I will call the school, he said. I do not have to give my name. I will only say that there is a child who needs to be checked on more carefully. I looked down at the sandwich in my hand. Part of me was still terrified that my mother would find out. Another part of me was so tired that I only wanted someone to step in and say, I did not have to survive alone anymore. Don't say it was you, I whispered. He nodded. I won't. That night I recorded another video. I said that Mr. Harold had helped me eat, that I did not want him to get in trouble, and that I did not know what would happen next. Then I paused for a long time before saying the final sentence. If someone is watching this video, please do not believe my mother just because she knows how to cry in front of people. After I said it, I turned the camera off. In the silent house, I could hear my heartbeat clearly. For the first time, that sound was not only fear. It felt like a reminder that I was still alive, and if I was still alive, I still had the right to be saved. The next morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to swallow a few spoonfuls of the soup Mr. Harold had left for me when the doorbell rang. It was not his familiar, gentle knock. This time there were 3 clear, slow rings, as if the person outside knew there was a frightened child inside. I walked to the door on weak legs. I saw a woman standing on the porch. She looked a little over 40, her hair neatly tied back, wearing a dark blue jacket and holding a folder. There were no police officers beside her, no shouting, nothing that looked like the nightmare my mother had threatened me with. She smiled very softly. Hello, Lily. I'm Angela Brooks from Colorado Child Protective Services. May I come in and talk with you for a moment? I gripped the doorknob tightly. In my head, I heard my mother's voice. Don't bother anyone. Don't embarrass me. They won't believe you. I almost closed the door. But my stomach cramped, my head felt heavy as if it were filled with water, and for the first time I was tired of protecting someone who had never protected me. I opened the door. Angela stepped inside very slowly. She did not look around with curiosity. She observed with the silence of someone who had seen many beautiful houses hiding hurting children inside. Where are your parents, Lily? She asked. In Europe, I said. For a month. Who is here with you? I looked down at the floor. No one. She did not gasp. She did not ask why I had not called someone sooner. She only wrote in her notebook, then said, "Thank you for telling me the truth." That one sentence alone made my throat tighten. She asked for permission to see the kitchen. I let her in. She opened the refrigerator and looked at the empty shelves, the jar of tomato sauce, and the bag of bread with a few dry slices left inside. She looked at the trash can with instant noodle wrappers, the stack of unwashed dishes, and the silver card lying on the table like a false promise. Then she turned to me. Lily, is there anything you want to show me? I stood still. I thought of the videos, the journal, the screenshots of my mother's posts, the emails she had sent, and the threats. I had held them like a life raft, but when it was time to hand them to someone else, I was afraid again. If you're not ready, that's okay, Angela said. But I need to know the truth so I can protect you. I went upstairs and got the tablet and the notebook. When I came back, my hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped them both. I recorded it, I said, because I was afraid no one would believe me. Angela took the tablet. The first video showed me standing in front of the refrigerator, my voice hoarse as I said it was day 15. When the video ended, she did not speak right away. Her eyes reddened, but her voice stayed calm. Lily, you did something very brave. I did not know how to answer. I had never thought of myself as brave. I had only thought of myself as hungry. Then she set the tablet down, looked straight at me, and asked the question I would remember forever. Lily, do you want to be safe? I looked at the empty kitchen, the empty chair, and the useless card on the table. Then I nodded. Yes, I whispered. I do. The next day, Angela called my mother from Mr. Harold's living room. I sat in the kitchen, both hands wrapped around a cup of warm milk, listening to Angela's very calm voice. I knew that on the other end of the line, my mother would become a different person. The woman who had hung up on me when I said I was hungry would immediately speak in the voice of a misunderstood mother. Mrs. Carter, this is Angela Brooks from Colorado Child Protective Services. We received a report that your daughter has been home alone for several days. I could not hear my mother's answer clearly, but I saw Angela writing quickly in her notebook. A babysitter, she asked. Yes, could you give me her name and phone number? A long silence followed. I imagined my mother smiling, searching for a name ordinary enough to fool everyone. You're saying Mrs. Whitman comes every day, correct? Yes. Please send me her information today. Angela ended the call. She did not say anything right away. She only looked at me in a way that told me she had heard that kind of lie too many times. Is there a Mrs. Whitman Lily? I shook my head. I don't know anyone by that name. There was no Mrs. Whitman. There was no babysitter. There was no adult stopping by every day to check on me. There was only the empty house, Mr. Harold with his quiet meals and the videos I had recorded in fear. 2 days later, Angela came back with a folder. She sat across from me and laid each page down as if she were placing the truth on the table. There was the school nurse's report. There were Mrs. Patterson's notes. There were photos of the refrigerator. There were copies of the emails my mother had sent me. And there were my parents' credit card statements. Lily, she said very slowly, your parents spent more than $47,000 on this trip. I looked at the black lines on the paper. Hotels, restaurants, clothing stores, yacht tickets, dinners that cost as much as months of food for a child. And the card they left for you, she continued, was never activated. It could not be used from the very beginning. I already knew that. I had heard the automated voice say it. But when I saw it inside an official file, I finally understood that this was no longer only my feeling. It was a truth with dates, signatures, and evidence. If you are listening to this and have ever been forced into silence to protect someone else's image, comment truth. And if you want to know what happens when Lily's parents return to their own party, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next part. That afternoon, my mother sent me an email. There was no concern, no apology, only one short paragraph. If you keep lying, I will tell everyone that you have psychological problems and need to be sent away for treatment. I read that email 3 times. Then I turned on the camera and read every word aloud. When I finished, I looked straight into the screen. I am not lying, I said. And this time I will not stay silent just so my mother can look clean in other people's eyes anymore. My parents returned on an afternoon so clear, it felt almost cruel. The Denver sky was pale blue, and sunlight fell across the clean rooftops and evenly watered lawns, as if the whole neighborhood were preparing to welcome a normal family home from a normal trip. But inside Mr. Harold's house, I sat by the living room window, both hands resting on my knees, staring across at my own house, as if I were watching a stage before the curtain rose. My mother had posted an announcement the day before, a small party to share photos from Europe. She called it a cozy evening with close friends. But I knew my mother never did anything small. She needed an audience. She needed people to see her tanned skin, her new dress, and the pictures from Paris, Rome, and Santorini. She needed everyone to believe her life was still perfect. That afternoon, cars began stopping in front of my house one by one. My mother's friends, my father's co-workers, neighbors, and a few women from my mother's book club. They walked in carrying flowers, wine boxes of pastries, and smiles that had no idea they were entering the final scene of a lie. From Mr. Harold's window, I could see the living room glowing with light. Balloons hung near the fireplace. A large welcome sign had been put up. On the television, photos from the trip played one after another. My mother stood in the center of the room wearing a dark blue dress. I had never seen before. Her hair carefully styled, her lips, read a wineglass in her hand. She smiled at everyone with the same smile that had once convinced the whole neighborhood she was an admirable mother. My father stood near the television, a little thinner than before, but silent as always. He did not raise his glass much. He did not speak much. Now and then he glanced toward the stairs, where I should have appeared if my mother's story had been true. I wondered whether he knew I was no longer there. I wondered whether he had ever asked my mother that question. A blonde woman stepped closer to my mother. I could not hear clearly, but from the movement of her lips, I guessed she was asking about me. My mother placed a hand on her chest, smiled softly, then pointed upstairs. Lily is tired after summer school. She is resting in her room. I sat across the street inside Mr. Harold's house, watching my mother lie about me when I was no longer even inside that house. It was a strange feeling. It no longer hurt sharply, like it had in the first days. It felt clear. It was like I was finally standing outside the play I had once been forced to perform. Just as my mother raised her glass to make a speech, a black car stopped at the corner of the street. Then a police car pulled up behind it. My heart beat so hard that both my hands went numb. Esther. Harold sat beside me and placed one hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to watch if you don't want to," he said. But I kept watching. Not because I wanted to see them humiliated, but because I needed to see the truth walk through the door that fear had kept shut for nearly a month. Angela stepped out of the car holding a folder. 2 police officers followed behind her. They did not rush. They were not loud. But with every step they took, the house across the street seemed to grow smaller. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw my mother turn toward it, her smile still on her lips. She probably thought it was a late guest. Then the door opened. My mother's smile froze. Angela stood on the porch, calm and serious. The 2 police officers behind her were clearly visible beneath the front light. Inside the living room, the laughter slowly died. Everyone turned to look. My mother tried to step outside and close the door behind her, but a female officer lifted one hand to stop her. I could not hear every word, but I saw my mother's face change color. First surprise, then anger, then an attempt to return to politeness. Angela said something and opened the folder. My father stepped forward, his face deathly pale. My mother turned back toward the room and gave the guests a strained smile, as if smiling just a little longer could put everything back under her control. But this time, no one smiled with her. From the window of Mr. Harold's house, I watched Angela step into my family's living room. The two police officers stood behind her. They did not raise their voices, but their presence froze the entire room. On the television, the photo of my mother and father standing in front of the Colosseum was still glowing. In the picture, my mother was smiling brightly. In real life, her face had gone white. Angela stated clearly that my parents were being investigated for child neglect and endangering a minor. My mother immediately laughed. The sound was high, thin, and off rhythm. It could no longer hide anything. There has been a misunderstanding, my mother said, looking around as if searching for support. Lily is upstairs. She just likes attention. Angela's expression did not change. Lily is not upstairs. She was taken to a safe place 4 days ago. The room went completely silent. My father stood frozen beside the television, his lips parted but unable to form a word. His whole life, he had been used to standing behind my mother. But in that moment, there was nowhere left to hide behind her. There was a babysitter, my mother said quickly. Mrs. Whitman came every day. Angela opened the folder. We verified that. There is no Mrs. Whitman. No babysitter ever came to this house. Whispers rose through the room. My mother spun around. Don't listen to them. Lily is overly sensitive. She imagines things. At that moment, one of the officers picked up the television remote. The Europe photos disappeared from the screen. For 1 second, the living room was filled with black. Then my face appeared. I looked thinner in the video than I remembered. My hair was tangled, my lips were dry, and dark circles sat beneath my eyes. I was standing in front of the open refrigerator, my voice small and hoarse. Today is day 15. There is 1 dry slice of bread and tomato sauce left in the refrigerator. I don't know how much longer I can handle this. The guests who had been raising glasses in front of pictures from Santorini were now watching a child open an empty refrigerator inside the very house where they were holding wine. The video changed. I had placed the tablet in front of the scale. I read out my weight, then said I had been losing weight since the day my parents left. Next came the clip of me reading my mother's email aloud. If you keep embarrassing me, I will tell everyone you have psychological problems. A glass fell onto the carpet. It did not break. It only rolled once and stopped beneath the sofa. My mother rushed toward the television. Turn it off. She made it up. She has always wanted to ruin everything for me. Mrs. Patterson, my teacher stepped out from the corner of the room. No, she said. Lily did not make it up. I saw her come to class exhausted, hungry, wearing the same clothes for days. My mother looked at her as if she were a traitor. You have no right. You had no right to leave your child hungry for a month and call it a vacation. The room went dead silent. Angela continued reading from the file. My parents had spent more than $47,000 on the trip. 5-star hotels, expensive restaurants, shopping in Milan. Meanwhile, the card they had left for me had never been activated. My mother looked around the room searching for a sympathetic face, an outstretched hand, someone to say there must have been a misunderstanding. But no one stepped forward. My father finally spoke. Monica, maybe we should cooperate. My mother turned toward him, mascara running down her cheeks. Shut up. You were there too. You knew too. That sentence made everything clearer than any testimony could have. My father took 1 step back. The female officer stepped forward and took out handcuffs. Monica Carter, Richard Carter, you have the right to remain silent. My mother kept shaking her head. No. This cannot be happening. But it was happening. In front of 40 people, in front of half-finished glasses of wine, in front of every beautiful layer of paint my mother had spread over our family. When they led my parents toward the door, no one said goodbye. The guests moved aside, leaving a narrow path through the room that had once been full of laughter. I watched my mother step across the porch. For one moment, she looked up toward Miss Harold's house. I did not know whether she saw me, but I did not hide anymore. For the first time in my life, I looked straight back at my mother without being afraid of her eyes. After the police car turned the corner, my house became quiet in a very different way. There was no music anymore, no forced laughter, no sound of my mother trying to pull every gaze back toward herself. The guests left one by one as if staying even a few more minutes would force them to look directly at the perfect picture they had once believed in. I was still sitting by the window in Mr. Harold's house. My hands rested on my knees, cold and stiff. I thought I would cry when I saw my parents being taken away. I thought I would feel relieved or satisfied or afraid. But inside me there was only a huge emptiness, like the silence after a storm, when everything has already fallen. Esther. Harold did not ask me how I felt. He only placed a blanket over my shoulders and sat beside me. His silence was different from my father's silence. My father's silence was avoidance. Esther. Harold's silence meant he was staying. A little while later, Angela knocked on the door. When I saw her, I realized I had been holding my breath since the police car arrived. She sat down in front of me, her voice softer. Now, Lily, your parents have been taken in to speak with the police. Tonight you will not have to go back to that house. I nodded. That sentence should have made me happy. But happiness felt like too much of a luxury for a child who had just survived a month of hunger and fear. Then, where will I go? I asked. Before Angela could answer, a car stopped outside the porch. Esther. Harold opened the door. A woman stood there, her brown hair tied low, wearing a gray sweater, her face tired. When she saw me, her eyes reddened. Lily, she said, her voice breaking. I'm Claire. Aunt Claire. I stood up very slowly. That name had once been forbidden by my mother. And now the person carrying that name was standing in front of me, not angry, not judging, only trembling as if she had lost me for too long. Aunt Claire stepped closer, then stopped one step away from me. Can I hug you? No one had ever asked me that. Adults usually touched me when they wanted, pulled me along when they needed to, and pushed me away when I became inconvenient. But Aunt Claire asked. And because she asked, I started crying. I nodded. She hugged me very gently at first, then tighter when I clung to her sweater. Her sweater smelled a little like coffee, a little like rain from a long drive, and something so warm I did not know how to name it. All the days when I had tried to be good, tried to be quiet, tried not to be hungry, tried not to be afraid, finally collapsed. I'm sorry, Aunt Claire whispered. I didn't know they had gone this far. But from now on, you are not alone anymore. If you believe that real family means the people who show up when you need them, most comment family. And if you want to follow Lily's ending after everything she has been through, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the final part. That night, I did not return to the house across the street. I stayed at Miss Harold's house, ate a bowl of hot soup, and Aunt Claire sat beside me until I fell asleep on the chair. Before sleep pulled me under, I heard her tell Angela that she would apply for temporary guardianship, first thing in the morning. I did not understand all those legal words. I only understood one small, enormous thing. Someone had come. Someone had seen me. Someone had chosen to stay. 6 months later, the court gave its final ruling. I was not in the courtroom. Angela and Aunt Claire agreed that I did not need to sit in front of my parents one more time and listen to adults argue over whether my pain had been serious enough. I stayed home in Aunt Claire's small apartment in Boulder, holding a cup of cocoa with both hands, waiting for the phone to ring. When Aunt Claire came back, her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. My parents had pleaded guilty to avoid a long trial. They were placed on probation, ordered to do community service, and required to attend mandatory counseling. But the most important thing was that the court granted long-term guardianship to Aunt Claire. I did not have to return to that house anymore. That night, Aunt Claire placed an envelope on the table. "Your mother sent a letter," she said. "You do not have to read it. Not today. Not ever, if you do not want to." I held the envelope for a long time. My mother's handwriting was still beautiful, and even as if even an apology had to look perfect. In the end, I put it in a drawer. Life with Aunt Claire was nothing like the big house in Denver. Her apartment was small, the dishes did not match, the sofa was old, and my room was only large enough for a bed and a bookshelf. But for the first time, someone asked me what pictures I wanted to hang on the wall. Someone sat across from me at dinner and truly listened. It took me almost a year to stop checking the refrigerator every morning. It took even longer to believe that if I made a mistake, Aunt Claire would not disappear. Some nights I dreamed I was standing in that empty kitchen again. Aunt Claire would simply sit beside me and say, "You are safe. I am here." When I was 18, just before leaving for college, I opened my mother's envelope again. She wrote that she was sorry that she had gone to therapy, that she did not expect me to forgive her, but wanted me to know she was trying to change. I read the letter twice. I no longer felt anger in my heart, only a very distant sadness. I did not write back. Not because I wanted to punish my mother, but because for the first time I understood that silence could also be a boundary. Some doors do not need to be opened again just because the person on the other side has learned how to knock. On the day I stepped onto the college campus, Aunt Claire hugged me for a long time before driving away. When her car disappeared behind the trees, I stood alone in the middle of campus, but I no longer felt abandoned. I remembered the 11-year-old girl who had once sat at the kitchen table dividing $20 across a month and wondering how little she had to eat to survive. I remembered the silver card that did not work. I remembered the trembling videos, the empty refrigerator, my mother's cold voice over the phone, and the moment the truth walked into the party. I did not regret telling the truth. I only regretted that I had once needed to be that hungry to understand. I deserved to be protected. Family is not always the people who give birth to you. Family is the people who show up. It is Mr. Harold with a hot plate of spaghetti. It is Mrs. Patterson refusing to look away. It is Angela asking whether I wanted to be safe. It is Aunt Claire asking if she could hug me. My parents left me $20 and a useless card. But I walked out of that summer with something they had never given me: truth, boundaries, and a life that belonged to me.